pangs. Buffy and the gang celebrate Thanksgiving by beating up a bunch of Native Americans.
We open with a kid walking through the woods at night before Buffy appears behind him and just starts beating him up because he's a vampire. And he says, "Things were better back before you came," which was a pretty dumb and obvious thing to say because her job is to kill them. That would be like an ant saying to an anteater, "Things were a lot better before you came." But it still wasn't as dumb as the one-liner Buffy throws out as she stakes him.
And they say one person can't make a difference.
Afterward, Buffy seems to sense something and looks around, but she doesn't notice someone hiding in the bushes. And what do you know? It's f***ing Angel. Just what the show needed. Oh, man. The next day, at a breaking ground ceremony for a new cultural center, Anya admires construction worker Xander, and Willow complains about how Thanksgiving ignores the genocide of the Native Americans. Anya points out that eating a turkey on Thanksgiving is a ritual sacrifice, which was actually an interesting perspective.
Well, they deserve it. Xander digs about 3 times before pulling a brink and falling into a giant open pit directly beneath the dig site. So civil engineers, land surveys, who needs those?
And even though Buffy and the others were watching when Xander fell in, we don't get their reaction, which I thought was weird. That night, Angel creeps through the bushes outside Buffy's dorm.
Leering at the window. What a weirdo.
They gotta keep their characters consistent.
Yeah, even the ones who shouldn't be in the show anymore. Willow says Xander fell into the lost Sunnydale mission, which was assumed destroyed from a huge earthquake a long time ago.
Buffy says that even though her mom is out of town, she can cook a Thanksgiving dinner for everyone. And Willow tries to bring up genocide again, but eventually agrees.
We cut to Spike stumbling through the woods, being tracked by Riley and friends, who mention his implant that prevents him from hurting things.
Even though he fought all of them in the hallway last episode. And they now have camouflage face paint on, which just makes them look even stupider.
And I hoped that something would result from this scene, and it wouldn't just be in the episode to remind us that these characters exist, like they've done in the past.
Anya visits Xander, who seems to be sick, and she says he needs to stay home, and gets excited when he accidentally calls her his girlfriend.
And we cut to the destroyed mission, and we see that when falling through the hole, Xander woke up Slimer.
Then we cut to the woman in charge of the cultural center, where the green mist comes in and heads towards a Shumash knife artifact, where it manifests into a full-body Native American,
who promptly cuts her up. Later, Buffy and Willow are investigating, and Willow mentions that the professor was missing an ear.
And the missing ear makes Willow think that it could be a witch to blame, which I thought was interesting, but it doesn't go anywhere.
And Buffy finds what I hope the police found earlier, a missing artifact and a case of artifacts that are all labeled with pictures. So they take the news to Giles, where they're going to have their Thanksgiving feast.
Because Buffy has bullied him into hosting. When she leaves, Angel pops out, and they mention that a friend of his had a vision of Buffy in danger, which Giles even points out is pretty much a constant state for her.
How did he know it was a vision? Couldn't it have just been a dream?
I don't remember, but I think there's a character in the other show that has visions or something.
Wow, that sounds like the most plot device character ever.
Yes. Giles says he wants to tell Buffy that Angel is there, but Angel gives some generic non-answer as to why he doesn't want to let her know that he's there.
Look, it would distract her, it could get her hurt. I don't want to get in the way.
And he says that there's a Father Gabriel that probably knows more about the mission.
And Giles says he will try to contact him, but he doesn't even ask Angel what church he's connected to or anything.
Well, we know Sunnydale is all contained within one city block.
And Angel says he's going to go watch over Buffy creepily, and they have some dumb melodramatic dialogue about how it's not fair that he can see Buffy, but she can't see him. How deep.
My eyes rolled so hard, they fell out of my head, and I still haven't found them. Meanwhile, Spike is watching other vampires eat people, and it was pretty funny.
Buffy and Willow are also wandering around when Riley comes by.
Willow makes herself scarce, only to be confronted by Angel,
who grabs her creepily, which no one else reacts to for some reason.
And instead of doing pertinent, helpful things that he says he's there to do, he just focuses on who Riley is.
And Willow points out how stupid it is that he says he can't talk to Buffy directly.
If she sees me, it'll be worse.
See, I don't get that.
But they brush it off this time, too.
If they didn't want him in this show, why do they put him in this show? They're doing everything they can to prevent him from becoming a character again. Don't put him in the show.
Yeah. Buffy tries to invite Riley to their Thanksgiving get-together, but he says he's going home to Iowa.
I mean, it's not that hard. Joyce hasn't been in the show. She's not a character. Spike has made it back to his lair with Harmony, who throws him out because she has found a sense of self-worth. And Spike's fall off the bed when she pulled out that steak was pretty good.
And you're mean!
You had that in our bed?
And surprisingly, she follows through on kicking him out.
Buffy visits a church and just keeps calling out Father Gabriel's name like a weirdo. And when she goes outside, she finds the mystical native killing Father Gabriel.
He and Buffy fight, and he states he is vengeance for his people's slaughter.
Now you kill their spirit. This is a great day for you.
Before turning into CGI.
Buffy goes back to Giles and tells him what happened. And she has to correct him when he keeps using the term Indian, which I thought was funny.
She's struggling with the fact that this dude isn't just an evil dude, and there's an indigenous culture thing mixed up in all of it, and it's compounded when Willow comes in and says how peaceful the Shumash were, and were completely slaughtered.
And she says that Shumash who were accused of doing something wrong would have their ears cut off and brought back as proof of their punishment. They also argue about peas for a while, and I liked Buffy's response to Giles.
I like mushy peas.
You're the reason we had to have pilgrims in the first place.
Willow and Giles are arguing about what course of action to take, and when Buffy leaves the room, they start talking about Angel.
Xander and Anya show up, and the interaction there was pretty funny.
You look like death.
Are you okay? You didn't bring rolls?
Meanwhile, the Shumash dude is procuring new weapons, and I guess there isn't any sort of police presence at the place where someone was already murdered. We saw that caution tape up before, and now he's just smashing into display cases.
And I wondered why he didn't take those weapons when he was there earlier. Back at Giles' place, Xander tells the others about his sickness, and Buffy and Willow say it must be part of the Shumash curse, and that Xander has, among other things, smallpox and syphilis. So it sounds great.
Willow is looking for a non-traditional remedy, and Giles is speculating why the people being killed are the people being killed. Everyone starts arguing, and Buffy just doesn't want to hear it because it's all ruining her Thanksgiving dinner plans. The important part of this episode.
She talks to Giles about how important Thanksgiving is, but Giles reiterates that this spirit will not stop killing people. And suddenly there is a knock at the door, which triggers the suspense soundtrack.
It turns out to be Spike, begging for help, revealing his inability to hurt anyone, which Willow confirms.
Again, even though he beat up a bunch of people last episode.
And he says he has information about the army guys.
So instead of taking the easy opportunity to finally kill him, Buffy decides to let him in, which I'm sure will never backfire in the future.
Meanwhile, the Shumash dude has seen the mummy and has decided to pull a similar move and summon more Shumash dudes to bring
man.
vengeance.
You're gonna make me put in a clip from The Mummy.
Oh yeah.
Buffy ties Spike to a chair while Anya cooks, and Giles figures out that the spirit is targeting authority figures.
When they demand information from Spike, he initially refuses, but instead of pushing him, they just get distracted by other stuff.
Willow refuses to find a way to kill the spirit because she sympathizes with it, which leads to more arguing between her and Buffy. And Spike interrupts, saying what's done is done, the natives were wiped out, end of story.
There's nothing they can possibly say to make things better. It's kill or be killed.
And it might not sound like it, but I thought it was a pretty funny argument.
So Willow, Xander, and Anya go to warn the Dean.
Because they think he's a likely target. Spike complains about not being able to feed, when suddenly an arrow flies in through an open window. Buffy tries to placate the spirit, which probably has the opposite effect.
Maybe I wasn't clear before about how terrible we all feel, because we're trying to help. You could have casinos now.
Meanwhile, Willow, Xander, and Anya have failed to convince the Dean that they're in danger and just give up, apparently, when they run into Angel.
They tell him they think the spirit is targeting a leader, and Angel says,
He's a warrior. To a warrior, the leader means the strongest fighter.
what a big assumption to make.
And strongest where? They automatically assume Buffy, but it could be the whole country.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Could be going after Arnold.
That's what I was going to say.
Trying to think of a good one-liner Arnold could use. It's time to bury the hatchet.
Angel calls Giles, who doesn't tell Buffy who's on the phone, while arrows are flying in from all directions. Buffy asks Giles how many enemies there are, even though they're both in the same place and can make the same observations. When they grab crossbows and start returning fire, it leads to this really goofy shot of Buffy's arrow flying in slow motion. And meanwhile, Spike keeps adding to his collection of arrows.
Willow, Xander, and Anya all reconvene at the house. There's a big fight, and they discover they can't kill the Shumash.
Although holding them off with shovels seems to work for some reason. The main spirit guy gets inside and fights Buffy, while Giles finally uses that mace that they've had sitting around for 4 seasons.
I really liked the clip of him getting his head slammed into a wall repeatedly. That was really funny. Buffy is about to be attacked from behind when she's saved by Angel. Another reason why he should not have been in this episode.
Buffy figures out that the spirits can be hurt with their own weapons, and in response, the main Shumash guy pulls a Chuck Norris and turns into a bear.
And then we get a nice homage to Hercules in New York, where Buffy's fighting a bear and it just looks really dumb.
Showing that maybe they did intend to get Arnold for this episode.
Yeah, he could have attacked it and said, "I'm canceling your reservation."
Xander distracts the bear, and Buffy stakes him, causing him to dissipate along with all the others. How convenient. The genocide of the Shumash people is complete.
That's awful.
I forgot I had that in there. Except that in real life, the Shumash people are still around. So I wonder what they think about this episode, because I could definitely see this being offensive.
This whole show was offensive.
Yeah, that's true. I feel bad for all the vampires out there.
Since the battle is over, Angel decides to mope off. Good.
And even though Buffy never sees him, she still manages to look longingly in his direction, which was great.
Later, they're eating their Thanksgiving dinner.
Willow feels bad for beating a Native American with a shovel. Spike feels bad for not having eaten anything in a long time. And Buffy feels bad for not having a good Thanksgiving.
And our last line is Xander accidentally revealing that Angel was there the whole time. I would have cried from laughter, but my eyes had still fallen out from before.
Pangs. Overall,
Man, I am f***ing ecstatic that we got to see Angel again. And that he spent the whole episode moping over Buffy. That's what this show has been lacking. So how many episodes did we make it this time between Angel leaving for good and showing up again?
I mean, technically I guess it was 8, but we did have that sort of appearance by him in the first episode where Buffy thought she saw him.
I was hoping in the opening, when he was in the woods, it was someone masquerading as Angel or a dream or something. I was let down again. Thanks, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And you know what was really funny? How there was a serious issue pervading the whole episode about a spirit exacting vengeance by killing people for atrocities of the past. But Buffy couldn't stop focusing on her Thanksgiving dinner. It was great. Whatever message the writers might have actually wanted to convey about indigenous cultures and whatnot was completely overshadowed by dumb jokes and general idiocy. Speaking of general idiocy, is doing a dumb one-liner during the opening going to be Buffy's shtick now? Because I could do without that, and it's happened twice in a row now. And Spike, even though he only showed up pretty much as comic relief, was the best part of this episode for me. I'm always up for some good physical comedy, and I think he pulls it off pretty well. I just hope that he won't be used solely as comic relief for the whole season. The character's assumptions about who was going to be killed by the spirits wasn't really backed up by anything, and then seemed to be completely thrown out the window when they just went after Buffy. So they never really confirmed why those 2 people were killed. Like you said, the Shumash are still around, and this episode, while trying to be all jokey about it, I could see it being perceived as pretty damn offensive. But in terms of just general writing, this episode was pulling in too many directions. I was hesitant to make a focused decision, and it brought back a bunch of shit baggage that I thought we were done with. And this opens the door to Angel just showing up whenever he wants.
I didn't think about it like that, but that's a good point.
I did not like this episode. I did not like it at all.
Okay, Dr. Seuss.
I gave it a D+.
Dang. I'm legitimately surprised. I gave it a B+. Whew. I thought this was by far the best episode we've had in a long time. I didn't think the plot was necessarily all that special in itself, but I thought it brought out some good arguments among the characters, and I'm glad they didn't resolve everything in a hokey way where it turns out they're actually all on the same side or whatever.
Yeah, instead they just made them all disappear into vapor, and that was that.
Yeah, that was kind of lame. That's true. I'm surprised they would even address America's history with the natives in a show like this. Other than the arguments, the other aspect I really liked about this episode was the humor, which, apart from some annoying Xanderness, which you always get, unfortunately, and certain moments being a little too in your face, I thought the humor worked really well here. Not only were the jokes better than usual, I thought the execution was a lot better overall, and there was more humor throughout, which made the tone more consistent than usual. I even liked some of the humor with Angel, with everyone assuming that he was evil when they first see him, but that's the only aspect I liked about Angel's presence here. As usual, he didn't really add anything to what was happening, and his useless warnings amounted to the same cryptic crap he was saying back in Season 1. After being introduced one episode ago, we barely got anything with the Riley and Friends subplot, which is probably a good thing because I really don't like those characters. Spike being brought in and almost being made part of the gang for the last part of this episode felt a little contrived. I still didn't see why they wouldn't just kill him.
And the one reason they did bring him in was because he said he had info about the army guys, but they never asked him about it.
Right, which I'm assuming that's going to come up next episode. That might make it a little better, but in this episode, it felt pretty flimsy. But I'm just glad I can say I fully enjoyed an episode of Buffy, and that hasn't happened very much, and not in a long time. And again, I'm surprised that you were so negative on this one, because I thought it was pretty good.
Alright, I forgot how good the humor was. I'll bring it up to a C.
Okay, I thought you were going to say like a D++ or something, but okay.
And to be clear, I'm sure Arnold does not really feel that way about Native Americans. Probably doesn't want to kill them.
Right. Arnold is too cool of a guy for that.
Who's he going after instead? No.